Gotcha. Well, a couple of hours. Tides aren't ideal, it's a bit windy, but you take what opportunities you get. Back on the water, been through lockdowns, been through injuries, been through sickness, all of the things that we face in everyday life these days. And as I say, what opportunities you're given, you get out, you have a crack. It's easy to sit at home on the lounge. It's hard to make time to get out, so make the most of it. Tides might not be ideal, conditions may not be favourable, but make the most of it. Certainly not going to catch them sitting at home. Hell, I might not even catch them sitting here, but a much better chance now. When I say tides aren't ideal for me, I prefer a dropping tide going to a low and then fishing the change of tide. I have the opposite of that at the moment. I have an incoming tide and I won't see a change of tide during the time that I'm on the water. What I will be doing is fishing up towards dusk and fishing in towards night time, so hopefully that bite period of dusk will bring on a bit of action, but if not, I'm out on the water, bit of fresh air, fingers crossed. So when you're approaching an area that you think you want to do some casting in, you want to start observing where the tide is affecting the water, how it is affecting the water, also the effect that the wind is going to have on the positioning of your vessel, be it your kayak or your boat, whatever it might be, and think about where you're going to position yourself so that you can cast effectively into the area that you want to target and keep yourself in that area for as long as possible. You have to think about which way the wind's blowing, how that's going to affect where you're sitting and where the tide is going to push you. No point just rushing in and casting blindly, because your lure or your bait may end up nowhere near where you think you want to target. So if you come in nice and quiet and stealthy like, you can do a bit of reconnaissance and see how things lay before you start firing in casts. I'm starting off with a 1/6 TT jighead on a 3-inch minnows with a bit of Procure. This is the mullet Procure, because I know that there's a lot of mullet in this system, so it makes sense to match that scent to the bait source that's around. By knowing that the tide is ripping, the 1/6 may not be sufficient to gain bottom and hold bottom, which is where most of the fish are going to be that I'm targeting, being flathead and possibly jewfish, but we won't know until we start. We may end up upgrading that to 1/4 or 3/8 fairly quickly. So just watching the line, feeling when it hits bottom. Can be quite hard at times with the effect of tide and wind. I haven't actually felt it hit bottom yet, which is a bit of a concern. It may be that that current is just too quick for the 1/6 to hit and it's being swept along. The other thing that I'm looking for when I get to a spot is to see any bait activity. If you can see bait getting hassled by the predators, you know you're in the right spot, and you can target your casts as a result of that observation. It won't always be something that you see, but you've also, if you've got a sounder, that's something that you can observe electronically. Sometimes when you're fishing light, the jig head and the lure bumping over the bottom with the current can be similar to the feel of a fish striking. If in doubt, rip it, strike it. Worst thing that can happen is you feel like a goose. Best thing that can happen is you hook up to a fish. You soon get a feel for what is and what isn't, but better to give it a crack. Yep. As soon as I get into the main current, if I'm not feeling any contact with the bottom, it's only when I'm up in the shallows that I'm able to feel any of that contact. So, and I think that I feel more confident with the heavier jig head. So what I'm going to do is, after this cast, I'm going to go to that heavier jig head, and it'll allow me to more effectively cover that bottom quarter of the water column. So as you can see, I've gone up to a 1/4. I've also gone to a diesel minnows, slightly larger profile, just a bigger paddle tail. Going to see how that goes. Haven't gone straight to the 3/8. Just going to suck it and see a little bit with this one, and see if just the 1/4 is enough. It's a Saturday afternoon, so it's a fairly busy little old waterway here at my local. So I'm sharing the water with quite a lot of pleasure craft. Not all of them are particularly friendly or willing to play by the law. Which is a shame. And they've got the whole river and they decide to arc over towards you. I'm just fanning my casts around at the moment from shallow water through to deep, trying to see if I can find a pattern as to where the fish may be holding. I don't have the advantage of a low tide that congests where the fish are. So even though it is a relatively nice clear day overhead, I've gone for a darker sort of natural colour because the water isn't all that clear. It's a bit murky, so I've gone with a darker colour. If the water was crystal clear and I could see the bottom here in 1.5 metres of water, I would have gone with something a cleaner, clearer natural colour, maybe like opening night or something with a gold tinge through it, maybe silver. But yeah, I've gone for a murkier, darker colour. Thought I had a hit then, so I've given it a bit of a touch up. Yeah, I've gone for something with a bit of a darker profile, try and gain a bit of attention in this murky water. I'm only sitting in 1.5 meters of water here, and the lure is still being swept along by the current, so I'm thinking that that 1/4 jig head in the deeper water is definitely not enough. So when I go back to the deeper water, I am going to switch to the heavier jig head. I just felt a tick on the line there, but I'm not getting any fight out of this, so it's just swimming with me. There we go. First bit of action for the day. A sleepy little flathead. Up here in the shallows, trying to get warm. There we go. That darker colour did the job. No fight in him until he gets to the stage where I try and unhook him. That's pretty typical for winter flathead. Get himself all tangled up. And now he's going to try and spike me, aren't you, mate? So, I'm going to use my glove here. Try and grab hold of the little lighter. Go. A healthy little dusky. You can tell he's a dusky by this big black spot here. There he goes. So there's at least one fish up here in the shallows. He's scuffed up my leader here around the knot, so I'm going to retie and get back in the water. Felt you that time, you cheeky little flathead. Just on the drop, just after I lifted it, I felt that telltale little tap. And that was all it took. I drifted too far out into about 3 meters of water over on my right hand side, so I positioned myself back into 2 meters of water. I just had a feeling, given the previous action, that at this stage of the day, in the afternoon, they were up here in the shallow water, trying to get a bit of warmth from the afternoon sun. So, and that was first cast after coming back into the shallows, and there's lesson learned. So all of the bait fish that have been pushed out of the system as the tide emptied, they're now being pushed back in as the tide fills again. And the predators in the system, they're not dumb. They live in here and they depend upon that food. So they're waiting at these ambush spots for that food to push past them again. It's like a sushi train for predators. So they're aware of what the tide is doing. They're waiting for that food to get pushed past them again so that they can snavel it as it comes past. It's just a matter of positioning yourself in your estuary where that food is going to get pushed so that you can imitate that bait, that food source. Shit! Excuse the language, folks, but that was a bull shark launching right beside my kayak, and I'm not sure if I've hooked him or hooked what it was that he was chasing. Either way, I think I'm a little bit undergunned. That was a bit unexpected. I was seeing some things on the sounder, and I'd had a couple of little taps, and I thought this looked like a promising place, but I didn't expect to see old Mr. Bullshark launch 5 meters from my kayak. And if I have hooked him on 10-pound leader, I don't expect this to last too long, but I'm getting towed away at a rapid rate of knots on my little 2 to 4 kilo stick. It's coming up towards the surface again, so if it launches again, we'll know fairly quickly if that's the case. Oh, just bitten through. I think we can say with some degree of certainty that that was Mr. Bullshark. Oh, well, that's a first for me. Oh dear. I'm going to call for a new set of underwear now, please. Strangely enough, it must have been a fairly good mouth hookup, because the line, oh no, the line is chafed. You can see the line's chafed right up here. Yeah, it's rough. Right up to here. Oh dear. Bullshark 1, rocket nil. That was a bit of excitement. Probably could have done without that little bit of excitement. I'll have to review the footage, but it looked like a pretty solid old shark. Wow. The things you see when you're out fishing. Gotcha. That was a decent hit. See if it's just an ambitious flathead. Yep, just an ambitious flathead. It's a fairly lusty size lure. That's the 5-inch diesels. Oh, there he goes. Nice release. Glad I didn't have to deal with that. Gotcha. Got those customary flathead shakes. Now it's swimming towards me. Got a bit more weight this one. A bit more solid fish. Taking a bit of drag. Looking for my net now. Got a fairly tight drag set on him, because I'm shooting for some bigger targets. Going to take our time. Let him take a bit of drag against the flex of the rod. Don't want to rush him now. This is the time that we've been casting all afternoon for, so we don't want to rush things. I didn't mind if a few of those littler models got away, but I wouldn't be particularly happy if one of the bigger girls got away. Still not a huge specimen, I'm imagining, but definitely a fair bit bigger than the ones we've seen so far today. Come on in. Come on in. There we go. Fills up the bottom of the net, and that's not a terribly small net, so she's a decent one. There we go. It's right on 57 centimetres. So it's a good solid flathead. Nice and healthy, it's biting down on my glove. And off it goes.